Took me so long to believe it, that you'd choose someone like me to carry your victory. Perfection could never earn it. You give what we don't deserve, and you take the broken things and raise them to glory. Oh, you are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. To worship you I live, to worship you I live to worship you. Oh, to worship you I live, to worship you I live to worship you, Jesus. To worship you I live, to worship you I live to worship you. To worship you I live, to worship you I live to worship you.
Hey, good morning, New Life Church. We're really glad that you're here tuning in this morning. If you're visiting and you haven't been part of our family, we just want to welcome you and say, hope you're going to enjoy our message and hope you enjoyed the worship we just had. My name is Mary Walker. My husband, Scott, and I are the senior leaders here. He's on a little bit of a break right now, so I'm filling in. Anyway, we do have a few announcements we want to make this morning. Limitless Youth is going to be having a getaway August 14th through the 16th. Jared wanted me to announce that. He will be getting in contact with you parents, kids, to let you know more details, permission slips, all that stuff. But just want to make sure you could get that on your calendar, August 14th through the 16th. Also, Debbie wanted everyone to know that Discovery Kids, she's going to be going back on Facebook Live starting this week, July 14th at 7 o'clock. She's going to be doing a lesson on the armor of God. She has some packets available with those lessons. If you would like to pick those up, you can stop by during our office hours and get them, or just reach out to Debbie and she will set up a time to connect with you. Also, we want to say thank you to those of you who have been faithful in your tithes and your offerings here at New Life Church. We just so appreciate that. There are different ways you can give, either through the mail, dropping it off here at the church, or we do have our online giving where you can text to give or go online and set that up. And as you can see right there on your screen, there is ways available for you to learn how to do that. So anyways, we want to get into the message this morning. We're going to be doing part 2 of a message that we showed starting last week from Erwin McManus, who spoke at a Bethel conference back in March. We just felt it was really timely for us to hear this together. If you didn't get to hear last week's, I encourage you to go back and listen to that. But if not, we're just going to go ahead and get started. Jesus, we just thank you so much for being able to learn from you, even if it is sitting looking at a screen. You're not limited to that at all. And we just want to open up our hearts and receive the word that you have for us today as a New Life family. So in Jesus' name, let's listen.
So he reasoned in the synagogue with both the Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace, day by day, with those who happened to be there. That's the second space. The first space is the space we create. It's what I would call the church. It's a place that we invite people to experience hope and love and acceptance and care. And it's hard work. It's hard work. The second space is the marketplace where we live every single day of our life. It's where we go on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday. It's where your kids play. It's where you shop. It's where you drink coffee. It's where you live life outside of this space. And the challenge a lot of times is that we're so clear about Jesus in our first space, and we're so unclear about Jesus in our second space. I just wonder how much of your faith translates from Sunday to Monday. Now, I'm not asking you that judgmentally. I just think one of the challenges is people ask me, why don't you use churchy language? I don't know if you can tell, I don't use a lot of religious language. And I know that there are certain words that if I use them, you'll know what they mean and you'll have an emotional response to them. I purposely don't use them. Because, you see, if I use a language on Sunday that actually doesn't fit in my world on Monday, I'm actually teaching you how to be irrelevant in the world in which you live. So I'm working really, really hard to translate these deeply spiritual concepts in a way where we can talk about it on Wednesday at lunch. And it's always so funny to me when I'm having lunch with Christians and they're just using all this God talk and they don't even pay attention to the waiters and everyone else because they don't realize that we sound so bizarre. And then we don't tip. And the question is, what second space does God have you in right now that God wants to be present in you there? So don't base your life on what manifestations happen here. Base your life on what manifestations happened there. How is God revealing himself through you in the world you're in right now? Now, I've always worked outside of the church. And a huge part of it is that, I was never really worth employing. So, you say, oh, you're a church starter. Yeah, that's what you call a person that no church will hire. And so I was that guy. I pretty much started every church I was ever involved in because I picked me and hoped other people would join me along the way. And in the 30 years we've been in LA, I've always owned companies and run businesses, and our dominant income throughout our entire life has been from the business world. And one of the challenges, of course, is that I'm also a pastor. And I never used that language until recently when my kids asked me to own that I'm a pastor. And so only in the last 5 years I've actually called myself a pastor. And that's been tricky for me. Because when I was in the film world, being a pastor was not helpful. It just wasn't. Because the moment they knew I was a pastor, they go, oh, he wants to make a cheesy Christian film. Or he'll be excited about a cheesy Christian film. And they'd bring me in and go, we want you to back this film. And I'm like, it's terrible. And I go, yeah, but it says Jesus. And I go, yeah, I know, he would be embarrassed. And I had all these film projects, and I met with every studio. And I've been turned down by every studio. I had that honor. And so many times I would bring in scripts and they go, it's too artistic, it's too artistic. I go, it's not too artistic. I see what you make. They go, well, it's too artistic for Christians. And I can tell you across the industry, what they say is that Christians do not want great art. That what Christians want is something that clearly communicates the message of Jesus, that preaches in their place. And what we need to realize is that over the last 100 years, the word Christian used to be the word that reflected the best in the world and has become the very thing that communicates mediocrity. And so when we talk about Christian art or Christian music or Christian films, it's usually a descriptive that says it's average. Now, what you're doing with music is changing the scale on that. Because, see, when people go, oh, that's great Christian worship, and I go, no, see, it's just great music, but it's an act of worship. And we need to create great art because it's an act of worship. And we need to be the best teachers in the world because it's an act of worship. We need to be the best architects in the world because it's an act of worship. Because how we do things gives us the platform to share our faith. And people always tell me, it's just so hard to talk about Jesus in the real world. I'm like, really? I can't get people to shut up. I mean, I'm telling you, I don't know what world you live in. I'm actually an extreme social introvert. You cannot know how hard it is for me to be around humans and without being socially awkward. My children have coached me on how to be socially acceptable. And so on airplanes, when they created Bose noise cancellation headsets, it was like manna from heaven. It was like God was saying, I love you, my son. I love you. I understand you. I appreciate you. And I just love putting those Bose headsets on because it was a way of communicating to people around me. I'm not available. There's someone in the seat, but I'm not here with you. Right? And I'm telling you, this has happened to me. I was flying across the world from LA to Asia somewhere, and I hear some guy thumping on my Bose. there should be some kind of unspoken law. You do not thump on another man's bows. You just don't do it. And he's like thumping on my bows. And I go, what? He goes, excuse me. And I said, yes. And he goes, I know I have a strange question. I go, well, what's that? And he says, are you like a God person? This is a 14-hour flight. I don't want to start this flight like that. All right, I have a whole series from Netflix. I've downloaded it. This is my only chance to watch this all the way through. And with that man, I said, yes. Yes, I'm like a God person. You know what he did? He grabbed the person in the chair in front of him, said, hey, this guy, I could feel it. He's like a God person. And then turns around and goes, what does that mean? Well, and I start talking, and two people in the other side go, could you talk louder? And all of a sudden, I'm having this whole conversation with the cabin. And I look for places, I go, they don't know me. So I signed up for this conference in I don't know, in Carmel, like beautiful Carmel. Took my wife, I said, it's like this conference of intellects and creatives, and they're all atheists and bohemians. And so I want to go so I can spend 5 days with people that don't know me and don't want to know me and in any way. And so I go there. I think it's called, I can't even remember, it's called Renaissance or something. And so I go up there at Carmel, and there's a cappuccino bar outside, and I'm with my wife, and I go up there, and I'm in line to get a cappuccino, and somebody goes, I think I know you. I go, no, you really don't. I look like a lot of people you know, and they go, no, I think you're that guy. Like you believe in God, right? And I go, yeah, I do. Okay, let me ask you a question. This is the question. Do you really believe God made the sun stand still? Right, it's in the Bible, right? And I go, well, by the way, it always stands still. I just want you to know, scientifically, we're the ones moving, but he goes, yeah, I just want to know if you really think that's reasonable. And I said, well, and my wife is here. She'll validate this. Other people, wait. Before you answer the question, I'm not there 5 minutes. I'm in a circle with people wanting to know, how could I believe as an intellectual that God made the sun stand still? As I explained to them, the sun is actually not moving. So he did it longer than just for a little while. And I said, no, I see, here's the problem. I said, I thought I was in this community of geniuses and intellects. And I said, I'm surprised that you would have such a limited view of possibilities. And I said, I have to be a person of faith because I believe in the impossible. And I know that I have a limited understanding of what can be. So I want to always keep my mind open. Oh, yeah, when you put faith like that, what I find is that, in the second space, people are really open to conversations. They're just not open to you preaching at them. But the only model we have is somebody preaching at us on Sunday. So we think the way we're supposed to do this is preach at them on Monday. But you're not. You're just supposed to love people, be the very best at what you do, and create interest. I could tell you this forever. I was flying from LA to Edmonton. There's a conference up there called Breakforth in January. So I spoke out there a few times, and they invited me to come back. It's really cold up there. There's just no reason to do a conference there in January. It's like 30 below zero, and people die. But it's the largest conference in Canada, I think. And so I'm flying all the way there. You ever feel like God's speaking to you, but you're not interested? Are you allowed to say that? You see, some of you are like, how do you hear God's voice? I'm like, how do you shut that voice down sometimes? And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. And I'm just saying that the whole flight there, I kept hearing this little voice in my head saying, talk to the man next to you. And I kept responding. Like, if you're God, all right, you know, because it could be just me, because I have a lot of voices, and, you know, and like, God, if that's you, like, no. You know, it's like, I'm just like really clear. This is me time. You got like you time, and this is me time. And you never talk to God like that, but you do. You just don't know you do. So the whole flight, I had this little inner voice telling me, stop watching that movie, take off those bows, and talk to the person. And I said, no, no, no. And then, ding, ding, the bell came on, the seatbelt light came on and said, please buckle up and put your seats up, preparing for landing. So I thought, I can like sneaky obey. You know what I mean? I've disobeyed the whole way, but if I obey at the end, you can't really hold that against me, right? You know what I'm talking about? You know, because God's not that clever. He can't figure out what you're doing, right? You know, and so we're about to land, and so I put up my computer, my headset, and I said, hi, my name's Erwin. See, I'm so open, so willing, and I said, what's your name? And he told me his name, and he goes, what do you do? And I thought, I got a few minutes, I got to go fast. So I started a church in LA called Mosaic. He goes, oh, that's unusual. I own a technology company called Mosaic. He pulls out his card and it says Mosaic. He wasn't making it up. I thought, wow, that's weird. And he goes, yeah. And he says, so tell me about Mosaic. And I started telling him because I only had 10 minutes before we landed. And then the pilot came on and said, we're not getting clearance for landing due to low visibility. And so we're going to have to circle the city several times. And so we circled and we just kept talking and talking and talking. And before God, the pilot came on there and said, we're not going to get clearance. We have to fly to Seattle. So he flew all the way back. I missed speaking to 10,000 people because I wouldn't speak to one. And I felt like God was saying, hey, just by the way, I have this weather thing down, just in case you're wondering, and if you're not available to speak to one, I don't really need to speak to 10,000. And so I just want to talk to you about your second space. See, because I've found in my life the number one reason people of faith cannot hear God's voice is because they ignore his voice when he talks to them about other people. And if you refuse to listen to God when he says, I want you to go serve that person, go love that person, I want you to go be a bridge for that person. I want you to go be my presence in that person's life. And I don't care if you like them. I don't care if you agree with them. I don't care if you think they're obnoxious. I don't care if you think they're the wrong political party. I want you to be Jesus in their life. I want you in this second space. And if you ignore that voice, stop thinking you're going to hear God's voice when you're asking about your career and your relationships and your love life and everything else. Because God's voice is one singular voice, and he sets the agenda, not you and me. All right. See, no rousing applause. I don't say the things that create like rousing applause. It's like, oh, yay, okay. Great. And so one last thing that will absolutely just stir you. And so he goes on. All right, let's keep going. We only have 10 more verses. We just covered 2. And so he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace day by day with those who happened to be there. And a group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to debate with him, and some of them asked, what is this babbler trying to say? Which really gives me a sense of hope. Right? They couldn't understand Paul, so I don't feel so bad about when I'm not that good. You're probably tonight going, what's this babbler trying to say? I'm going, hey, I'm just trying to be like Paul. Give me a break, okay? Others said he seems to advocate foreign gods. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. So he wasn't trying to be super complicated. He was just talking about Jesus and the resurrection, and they couldn't get it. Words that I think will change our lives. Verse 19, then they took him. See, the first space is a space we create, and we need to create a space where we invite people to find hope and community and a place of belonging and love and acceptance and faith. The second space is the marketplace where we live every single day. And the only way you're ever going to earn the right to speak in that environment is to show up early for work and leave late and be the best employee and do the best work and do everything at the highest level so that people want to know, why are you so committed to being the best at a job that seems so innocuous or mundane or ordinary? There is no ordinary work. Just people doing an ordinary job. You can take your job and make it extraordinary. And when you do that, you earn the right to talk about Jesus. But the third space is the space where you get invited into the world of those people who do not believe in Jesus. Then they took him and they brought him to a meeting at the Areopagus, where they said to him, may we know this new teaching you are presenting? You are bringing some strange ideas to our ears and we'd like to know what they mean. I love this. They're saying, could you come into our world because we can't get what you're saying? Would you sit down with us and explain? And it says, and all the Athenians and all the foreigners who lived there spent their lives doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. And Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, people of Athens, this is going to change your life. See that in every way. I see that in every way you are very religious. Do you hear what he's saying? He's actually complimenting them. I see how religious you are. We condemn people for their religion. He's like, you're so incredibly religious. He goes, for I walked around and I looked carefully at your objects of worship, and I even found an altar with the inscription to an unknown God. This is an incredible approach. Instead of saying, you're just an idolater, or you're like a pagan, or you don't believe in God, or you're a Buddhist or a Muslim or an atheist, he says, I just love how creative you are. You've invented so many gods. It's like, you guys are epic. I see your religion as your determination to find God. And so Paul actually uses the material in their world and treats it as sacred. And so I found this altar. How do you find the altar in their world if all you care about is your world? How in the world can we ever help people know Jesus if all we care about is them seeing it from our perspective, seeing our beliefs, seeing our convictions? Maybe we need to take time to understand why people believe what they believe, how they got where they are, and pay attention to the fingerprint of God in their soul. To an unknown God, he says, so you who are ignorant or do not know these very things you worship, and this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. I'm going to talk to you about the thing that we don't know about. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. Listen to what he's saying. He himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. He's talking to unbelievers. When was the last time you talked to someone who doesn't believe in God and said, I want you to know that God just cares about you so much, he breathes life into you. That everything you have, your life and breath and everything. See, a lot of times we think that a person has not had an encounter with God until they receive Jesus with us. But people are having encounters with God every second of their lives because God created the entire universe. Every time you inhale, you're having an encounter with God. It says, from one man he made all the nations that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. Why? God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far away from any of us. Do you hear what he's saying to them? You were not born in Athens by accident. See, the Jews thought you had to be born in Israel. You had to be born in Jerusalem. You had to be born right. But Paul's actually saying God established every nation and every boundary. God established every ethnicity, every color, every language. God established them, and he placed you there in the right time, in the right place, so that you would have your highest opportunity to find him. I love this. He's actually giving us a framework to understand how God works in the whole world. See, only the person who doesn't understand the power and beauty of God thinks the person in India is further away from God than the person in Indiana. He says, no, God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. How would we see life if we realize when we live this place, we're living and moving and have our being in the density of God's presence? That every human being is swimming in the presence of God. They're just holding their breath, not knowing they need to inhale. He says, as some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. And it's through this moment that verse 34 culminates, and some of the people became followers of Paul and believed. We don't like that. We ignore it. It doesn't say followers of Jesus. It says followers of Paul. Because when a person doesn't know God, at first they follow the person who knows God until they come to know the God that person knows. And some of the people became followers of Paul and believed. And among them was Dionysius. Oh, Dionysius. So Paul goes to Athens, named after the Greek goddess Athena, and goes up to a hill called Mars Hill, named after the god of war, Mars. And then he talks to a man named Dionysius, named after the god of drunkenness. And he comes to faith in Jesus. See, I think we need to stop measuring our effectiveness not just on the number of people that come into our gatherings, but how far away a person was that came to know Jesus through our community. It was so many years ago, before we moved to LA, I was trying to convince my wife, Kim, to move to Los Angeles, and it was a little hard at that time. She's from a farm in North Carolina, and LA was a nightmare for her. So I took her to LA, and I took her to Newport Beach, and I tried to drive through LA really fast and let her see an ocean, and drive through and let her see a mountain. And I said, honey, what do you want to do? She goes, I want to go on The Price is Right. And so I wanted to move to LA so badly that I went. You have to stand in line for hours just to stand in line for hours. And that's the way it was. This was back with Bob Barker. Remember him? And so we stood in line for hours to see if we'd get in. And then we finally got a ticket so we could stand in line for hours to get in. And then while you're standing in line for hours to get in, they interview people and they decide if you're going to be on the show. And so they walked up to me and said, hi, what's your name? And I said, my name's Erwin. And they moved on. I mean, it was like, that was how fast they rejected me. And then they said, and who are you? And my wife goes, I'm Kim. I'm from North Carolina. She played up that accent so big. And they put her on The Price is Right, and she was their first contestant. But we were there like for 5-6 hours, and I'm so mad. I'm in LA, I'm sitting in line, and eventually you have to acknowledge the person next to you. It's just awkward, right? I spent a lot of time just talking to Kim, but eventually I just turned this way and said, hi, what are you doing today? And so we started talking, and the person next to me, and they told me they're from like Uzbekistan. And the Soviet Union had collapsed, and their nation was free, and they were here to go on The Price is Right because they wanted to experience American things. Like, this is not American. And so we started talking, and eventually ran out of things to talk about, and eventually it just seems like it goes to God. So we started talking about God, and she was so clear. I just can't believe that Jesus is the only way. What about the people in India? It's odd that everyone is really concerned about the people in India. It's really weird. And I said, so what you're saying is you couldn't believe in a God that ignored the people in India but reached the people in America. She goes, yes, exactly. I said, no, that makes perfect sense. I would never believe in a God like that either. And I said, but here's the crazy thing. You're from where? Uzbekistan? She goes, Uzbekistan. And so you grew up speaking Uzbeki? She goes, Russian. I said, okay. And I don't know, and so I was just doing the best I could. And so I said, okay, you grew up speaking Russian, but now you speak English. How do you speak English? Because, well, I studied English while I was in Uzbekistan. And so when we became free, I was able to leave with my family. I said, okay, so you're from Uzbekistan and you grew up speaking Russian, but then you learned English. By the way, I'm from El Salvador, and I was born speaking Spanish, and then I learned English. Now, what's really odd is that you're from Uzbekistan, and you couldn't be free, but then suddenly you were free. Just the timing worked out really well. And you spoke Russian, then you learned English, and then you flew across the world on this particular day to be in line in Los Angeles. And I'm from El Salvador, and I spoke Spanish, but I learned English, and I went via other places and came to Los Angeles, and I'm actually just right next to you to go on a show I don't want to go on. And I said, if God could take you from Uzbekistan and teach you a second language, which was English, and take me from El Salvador and teach me a second language that was English, and then 30 years later, move us into the exact same spot so that you could know that Jesus died for you, don't you think God can reach every single person in India? And I can tell you that right there, she decided the price was right. And she did. And right there, she gave her life to Jesus. And And what I found in life is that when you step into the first space and the second space, suddenly God starts inviting you into the third space. And my time is up, but I'm just want to share with you just like this moment. I have a guy on our team. He's our pastor in Mexico. He went to federal prison for 5 years for selling 7 kilos of cocaine. And so he was an overachiever. And now he's in ministry and making a much lower income. And I walked into this store, this jewelry store, and met this guy from Israel, and he makes this jewelry. And that's the only reason I started wearing it, is because this guy who's a mystic and from Israel was a jewelry designer. And so I just started going in and buying jewelry and giving it to friends, and buying jewelry and giving it to friends, and then wearing it. And then he started following me. They started following me on Instagram, the store, because they saw me traveling the world wearing their stuff. And then one day I show up, and they said, hey, the owner wants to meet you. And he came in, and I met this designer from Israel, and we became friends. And I couldn't get him to church ever. I got him to one of our conferences, and that was a really powerful day. He shows up at our conference, and he hears the music, experiences everything. He hears the message, and he screams, where the F have you been hiding all of this? Except he didn't abbreviate it. And he didn't know what the language code was or anything like that. And so he called me up and he said, hey, I want you to do something with me. He goes, I have a group of friends who are like the people who run Burning Man. And we go away, 150 of us, into the desert together. And I'd like for you to come. We don't have any seminars, but the whole time you could talk about God. And so I said, sure. So I took my friend Emerson with me, and I forgot he had 2 strikes. So I took him to the wrong environment. And I'm there. I drive up into the middle of the desert, and there are all these tents everywhere, and it's very bohemian. And I walk up, and people start hugging me, and they know my name right away. And then I find him, and he says, oh, come. And he takes me inside this giant tent, and there's like probably 10, 12 people sitting around the table. He goes, this is him. And he puts me in a chair and he says, okay, go. And they spend the next 3 hours asking me questions about who God is and who Jesus is. And then he goes, okay, enough time with them. And he came, grabbed me, and he said, okay, now you have to come over here. And he took me to another section. And there's a bunch of people, they're all like rolling, weed and doing mushrooms. But like there's like one conversation about God for 3 hours, another conversation about God for 2 hours, another conversation about God for 4 hours. And it was like this beautiful experience. And Emerson was like, bro, there's like a lot of drugs here. I could go to prison for life. And I said, okay, I'm sorry, Emerson. I'll be more careful next time. But I just knew that it would be sort of dynamic. So I wanted someone with me, and just to verify that I did not partake. And one of the most beautiful moments for me was when one of the founders from Burning Man had this necklace on with one of the rocks from Burning Man in it. And I said, tell me about your necklace. And he started telling me about how they burn, the statue down. And it's symbolic. And this was one of 175 necklaces that the original people had and everything. And he takes it off and he puts it around my head. And he goes, this belongs to you now. And in that space, I was able to talk to people about Jesus that I would have never talked to at Mosaic. I would have never gotten them to church. And I don't even know if I would have ever gotten them into my home. But it says, then they took him. You see, there's some of you here, there are just places you can go that we can't go. There are places that God wants to put you inside of, but you can't be afraid of the world. You have to know that he who is in you is greater than he that is in the world. You have to know that he wants his presence to be made manifest in those places in your life. And just recently, there was a conference in Mexico, actually in Puebla. It's called La Ciudad de Ideas. It's called the City of Ideas. It's a purely secular event. I think they gave like Sam Harris an award, who's an atheist. And so I meet the family, the founders, and they say, hey, we want you to come and speak at our conference. And I said, why would you invite me to speak? You've never heard me speak. And the guy looked at me and goes, well, you're good, right? Yeah, sure. And I didn't think he'd follow up. Next thing I know, I get this invitation. So I'm going to the City of Ideas to speak with all the intellectuals across Latin America. And they give me the section called, and I'm saying this just because I want to. And they gave me the section on brilliant minds. Just let that sink in just for a moment, okay? And I know this is all about Jesus, but just for a moment, okay? Allow that to sink in. Because you see, it was secular, unbelieving people who gave me a platform that I could have never given myself. And what was so much fun is a lot of them were actually Jewish. And backstage, they were like, could you explain who you are and what you do? Because, in fact, one mother brought her daughter, who was in her 20s, said, okay, we're not really sure, like, what just happened. And could you explain, like, so what is, like, Mosaic, and what are you, and what just happened on that platform? And you know what's really fun? I got to look at these people and say, oh, let me explain. See, I've had a life-changing encounter with the creator of the universe, and his name is Jesus. And what you just experienced in a secular environment was the presence of God, revealing himself without me having to say a word. And what I think sometimes we think, we have more confidence in the material than we have confidence in the presence. We think we have to say everything the right way. But if God is actually dwelling within you and he's made manifest wherever you are, what in the world could God do with us? Not just in the first space where we're safe, or the second space where we work and live every day, but what if God wanted to take you into these third spaces and every nick and cranny of Reading, every nick and cranny of this planet? You have one of the greatest schools on the planet. What if all these students didn't just stay where they felt they were close to the fire? Because of the dangers, it becomes a fireplace and not a fire. What if they believed that in every place, whether they were teachers or architects or doctors or lawyers or baristas or just great dads and moms, that in every place they are creating these altars of the presence of God where people without Jesus can encounter him first, and then they'll go to church. Love you guys. God bless.
Okay, so there you have it. I hope that you received a lot of encouragement and challenges by the message both last week and today. A couple of things that stood out to me today from his message was his second space, where he talked about hearing the voice of God. And I was both convicted and challenged by that myself. When we really want to hear from the Lord, but not really about people, we want to know about our life and not others. And so I just love that he said, you know, when God says, I want you to go serve that person, I want you to be a bridge for that person, I want you to be my presence in that person's life, that I don't care if you don't like them, that if you don't agree with them, I don't care if you think they're obnoxious, I don't care if you think that they have the wrong political party. I just want you to be Jesus in their life. And that's so good for us to be reminded that we're just to be Jesus in people's lives and not worry about how they respond, how they react, and what's going on in them. And then also in that third space, just to quote him, where he says, sometimes we have more confidence in the material of what we're gonna say to people than we do in his presence in our lives. We think that we have to say everything just right. Even here trying to record this today, I wanna try to say it right, and it doesn't always come out right. Thankfully we can edit it, so I've had to work this through a few times. But we just have to be okay with knowing that his presence is in us, and it's not gonna matter, because he's gonna give you the words to say, or he's gonna help you to keep your mouth shut, depending on the situation, and just be in the room. And so to continue his quote, it says, what if God not only wants to reveal himself in and through us in that first and second space, but in that third space, where we go into every nook and cranny of Douglas County, and where people encounter him just because you are there, just because your presence is there. And with that, I also want to encourage you that your presence is very, very welcome and important to us in our community groups. If you have not signed up and haven't joined a community group, I encourage you to go there to sign up. You can go online. We still have some that are available. Also, if you are interested in leading a community group, please get in touch with us, because we would like to be able to expand that for more people in times and dates that are convenient, or maybe host it in your home. Maybe you have enough room and you just need somebody to come step in and lead that for you. We would love for you to contact us, because we want to keep expanding that. So with that, I just want to say, have a great week. I encourage you to be challenged with those other spaces that he encouraged us and challenged us with today. Jesus, we just thank you that we've had this opportunity to gather together in our homes, around coffee tables, around the kitchen table. Jesus, we just invite your presence, Lord, throughout this week as we go into these spaces, Lord, that you've created for us to be Jesus. In your name we pray. Amen. You guys have a great week.